Hi there, I'm Nadia. I gave my parents $5 million, everything I had from a tech exit, to rescue our family business. And what did I get in return? They changed the company name, locked me out, then sent a lawyer to tell me I wasn't even family anymore. Worse than the betrayal? They blamed me for walking away, after erasing me from everything I helped build. And now, they want my help again? The kettle clicked off just as the sun dipped behind the Denver skyline. I poured hot water over the tea bag like I'd done 100 times before. No ceremony, no care, just habit. The apartment was quiet, save for the low hum of the refrigerator and the faint tick of the wall clock. Then the voicemail started. "Hey, sweetheart, we need your help again. Just something small. Call me, okay?" My mother's voice, as polished and practiced as always, floated out from the speaker. I didn't pause. I didn't flinch. I just sat down at the counter, let the steam fog my glasses, and waited for the silence to swallow her words. Help. Again. I didn't even bother deleting the message. It had been almost 4 years since I wired that $5 million. Back then, everything felt like it was teetering on the edge. COVID had hit, supply chains were crumbling, and Knox Family Organics was one bad month away from total collapse. My parents sounded desperate. Not just scared for the business desperate, but scared for our future desperate. At the time, I'd just exited my second tech startup, sold my shares, and walked away with a portfolio most people only dream of. I remember the call clearly. Dad spoke first, then passed the phone to Victor, my older brother, whose tone always made it sound like he was already doing me a favor just by calling. "It's not charity, Nadia. It's family," he said. "Once this turns around, we'll fold you in officially. You'll lead it." I didn't even hesitate. I wired the money that night. $5 million, 24 hours, no contracts, just trust. For months I told myself I had done the right thing. I was helping the people who raised me, supporting the company that had our name etched into every label. I clung to that narrative until it cracked. The first fracture came in the form of a casual email, one I wasn't meant to see. It had been forwarded by mistake from the accountant to my old work address. I nearly skipped over it, but something in the subject line caught my eye. Q2 adjustments, CEO loan breakdown. Curious, I opened it. Then I stopped breathing. The document listed a series of large withdrawals dated shortly after my transfer. The description read, "Loan to CEO for operational support." At first, I assumed CEO meant general expenses, maybe payroll, vendor payments, renovations. But the math didn't add up. None of the amounts lined up with the outstanding invoices I'd seen earlier. The dates were precise, suspiciously aligned with payments I had personally tracked. I cross-referenced the document with the expense records from the bank I'd used to send the wire. Every line pointed to one thing. The money had been pulled and rerouted, outside the business. So, not operational expenses, not survival, just gone. And no one had said a word. I sat there blinking at the screen, heart thudding. I had to confirm it wasn't a mistake. Maybe the document was outdated. Maybe I was wrong. That naive reflex, the one trained over years of justifying their choices, kicked in again. I called Larissa. "Mom," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "I came across something in the expense reports. I just need to clarify." "Oh, Nadia, please, don't start picking at old wounds." Her voice was flat, cold, like I'd brought up an inconvenience, not a betrayal. "I'm not accusing anyone," I replied. "I just want to understand where—" "You gave what you gave," she snapped. "Let's not go backward. We've all moved on." And with that, she hung up. Victor didn't even return my message. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the living room with only the stove light on, staring into the stillness of my own silence. I thought about every family dinner where I picked up the tab, every emergency check I'd written, every call that began with "just this once." I had kept that company afloat. Me. Not Victor. Not Larissa. Not the legacy of Knox Family Organics, just me and my wire transfer. It wasn't mismanagement. It was strategy. They took what they needed and erased the trail, like I'd never existed. And what made it worse wasn't the money. It was the clarity. The realization that love in my family was never unconditional. It came with ledgers, expectations, unspoken rules that said, Give everything, ask for nothing, and maybe, just maybe, you'll be allowed to stay. I pulled out my notebook, the one I'd used for strategy sessions back in my startup days. I flipped past pages of notes and diagrams until I found a clean sheet. Then, with a black ink pen, I wrote, $5 million bought their survival and cost me my place. I stared at it, not for drama, not for anger, but because it was true. And truth, once written, demands a response. I didn't know what I would do next, not yet. But I knew one thing. I was done pretending this was about misunderstanding. It wasn't confusion, it was a decision, and they had made it without me. I didn't sleep, not really. I laid there on the couch, tea long gone cold, laptop open beside me, its soft light casting a pale rectangle across the hardwood floor. Denver's night was quiet outside my window, but inside my chest, chaos. Just before dawn, I sat back up and reopened the spreadsheet. There it was, same numbers, same dates. I highlighted the transactions one by one, my transfer, then their withdrawals, the silence in between. I whispered, barely audible even to myself. I saved them, and now I'm the ghost? It wasn't just theft. It was the way they'd moved on, as if I was never part of the rescue, like I'd never been there at all. I closed the file and reached for a box I hadn't touched in months, the one buried under old tax folders. Inside, printed press clippings, board documents, and a yellowing flyer from the Knox Family Organics 2022 Revival Showcase. That was the year they'd made it back. I hadn't been invited, but I had watched, alone from my apartment, on a glitchy live stream that kept buffering. I remembered it clearly. Levon standing tall on stage, my parents on either side, the Knox logo glowing behind them. He smiled like a politician, one hand raised in gratitude, the other gripping the microphone. It wasn't luck, he said with that rehearsed grin. It was creativity, risk, belief. We didn't give up, even when others doubted us. That's how you save a legacy. I waited for it, my name, my story. Even a thank you buried in some bland corporate sentence. But nothing came. Not once, not a syllable. He took the credit. They all did, and the crowd clapped like they'd witnessed a miracle. I shut the laptop harder than I meant to. The sound cracked the silence like a whip. Of course they hadn't mentioned me. Later that same week, I got a message from Quinn, one of our old coworkers, who had quietly left during the restructuring. She sent me a string of Instagram stories, champagne toasts, a vineyard in Sonoma, fireworks bursting behind the company logo projected onto a massive white tent, a private celebration, nearly 6 figures in expenses. Quinn added one line, "Payroll was late again that month, BTW." I didn't answer. What was there to say? It wasn't even the money anymore. It was the performance, the glitz, the audacity. How do you throw a party with money you begged for, then erase the one person who made it possible? The pictures burned in my mind. Victor toasting with some VC I never met, Larissa grinning beside a cake shaped like our original store, and Levon clutching the mic like he was Moses coming down the damn mountain. I felt sick. Back at my desk, I opened my journal, flipped past the page where I wrote about the $5 million. On a new line, I scribbled, "Maybe they just didn't know how to say thank you." Then paused. No, that wasn't right. This wasn't about politeness. This was about erasure. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd decided I didn't belong in their version of the story. I was inconvenient. A reminder of their dependence, of what they owed, and people like them, people who smile in press photos while knives still drip behind their backs. They don't like reminders. They built a stage, then cut me out of the light. Later that night, as the apartment dimmed into dusk, I pulled out an old photo album I'd brought with me when I left the family house. It smelled faintly of dust and lavender, probably from being buried in the bottom of a moving box. I flipped through pages slowly. Family barbecues, business launches, holiday events. In every photo, Levon stood front and center, his arm around our dad, a grin wide across his face. And me? I was always in the background, holding someone's plate, straightening chairs, carrying files, the quiet one, the helper, invisible. One photo stopped me cold. It was from 2011. Our first investor dinner. I had built the slide deck, scheduled the venue, even rehearsed Levon's speech with him. And in the photo, I was behind the camera. They didn't even think to include me. I stared at that page for a long time before whispering, "You were always the story. I was just the support beam." I closed the album, not gently. Then I turned on my laptop again, fingers hovering over the keys. I opened a new email. To Victor Knox. Subject, "We need to talk." I started typing, paragraph after paragraph, about the loan, the party, the photos, the silence. Then I stopped. I stared at the blinking cursor for almost a full minute, then closed the window. I wasn't ready to send it. Not yet. But they'd feel me coming. I didn't touch my laptop for the rest of the night. But I didn't sleep either. The cursor still blinked in my mind long after I closed the lid, like it was waiting for me to finish what I'd started. I tried distracting myself, washed a few dishes, folded laundry that had been sitting in a basket for 2 days, but every motion felt mechanical. By the time morning filtered through the blinds, I was already back at my desk. This time, I wasn't checking emails. I went straight for the hard drive. A year ago, before they shut me out completely, I'd backed up a few internal dashboards out of habit, part of a system I used when I was still helping with investor reports. I hadn't looked at them since. Now, I opened them one by one. "If they think I'm gone," I muttered, "they'll get sloppy." The tone in my voice surprised even me. It wasn't bitter, it was clinical, like I was examining something dead under glass. I pulled up the legal registry website and typed in Knox Family Organics LLC. No result. My stomach tightened. I tried Knox Family Holdings. Still nothing. Then I searched Tate Naturals. There it was. Same business ID number, same tax structure, same executive names, but filed under a new brand. And the filing date? Exactly 1 month after I wired the last installment, $750,000. There had been no shareholder vote, no meeting, no notification, and my equity? Still listed. But under a new term, non-voting interest. They'd renamed the entire company and scrubbed me out in the same move, and they did it legally. I sat back cold all over. So this was the play. Let me fund the rescue, wait until I was quiet enough, then bury my name while polishing their own. I wasn't just forgotten. I was systematically removed, sanitized from their story like I'd never existed. I opened another file. Archived reports from early 2023. Sales figures, P&L breakdowns, projected growth slides. Then I opened the investor deck they'd used in Q2. It had been shared with over 30 stakeholders. I aligned the two documents side by side. Page 1, net revenue inflated by 27%. Page 3, customer churn described as organic attrition, when the internal report clearly cited delivery delays, contamination concerns. Page 5, Levon's quote, "Our revival wasn't funded, it was forged." Forged? I highlighted the line, then started a new folder on my desktop. Proof. I dropped screenshots in, one after another. My fingers didn't shake. My pulse didn't spike. This wasn't panic anymore. It was focus. They didn't just minimize my contribution, they rewrote the narrative. A few days later, I called Marcy. She'd been in logistics, working under me for 2 years before she was moved off-site and then quietly laid off. We hadn't spoken since the winter before the rebrand. "Hey, Nadia," she answered, cautious but warm. "Didn't expect to hear from you." We exchanged a few surface-level updates. Denver's weather, how quiet things felt post-pandemic. And then I asked, straight out, "Why did they cut your department?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Efficiency officially. But it happened 2 weeks after we flagged some inconsistencies in inventory logs. We were told to drop it. We didn't." "How many people?" 7 of us. "And the ones who stayed?" "They signed new NDAs, stricter ones." I didn't respond right away. Marcy sighed. It felt like they wanted silence, not solutions. I thanked her, hung up, then added another folder to proof, labeled it witnesses. I wasn't gathering evidence for court, at least not yet. This wasn't about suing them. It was about seeing clearly. I'd spent most of my life telling myself they just misunderstood me, that they weren't good with words, that maybe I was too sensitive, too ambitious, too something. But the truth? They were exact in what they erased. Precise, professional. And now, I needed to be the same. I made coffee and sat at the window while it brewed. Across the street, a man walked his golden retriever. 2 kids zipped by on scooters. Normal things. Real life. The kind of life I had paused for years, waiting to be welcomed back into something that never wanted me whole. They didn't just take the company. I think they planned this from the beginning. The sun had barely broken over the rooftops of Denver when I drafted the email. It wasn't long. No accusations. No emotion. Just a single line and a subject. Subject, shareholder status inquiry. Body, am I still considered a shareholder? I hit send and waited. Mid-morning turned to early afternoon. I worked on other things, clearing out old receipts, making notes in my journal, even watering the plants I usually ignored. But the silence from Victor was loud. Too loud. Around 3 o'clock, I tried to log into the company's shareholder portal. Access denied. I refreshed the page. Still denied. I entered the credentials again, double-checked them. Same result. I stared at the rejection message blinking back at me like a dare. Account not recognized. I pulled up the Knox family email client and typed in my old credentials there too. This time it didn't just block me. It redirected to a user does not exist error. Every archived message, every shared folder, every login trail, wiped clean. It was surgical. A year ago I had access to every department folder. Logistics, R&D, PR, even compliance. Today, it was as if I'd never been on the payroll, never sat through 12-hour board meetings, never saved their crumbling house of cards with my own capital. I called Larissa. It went straight to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I opened the company's public-facing team page. My name was gone, completely scrubbed. Even in the former contributors section, I was missing. They didn't lock the door. They burned down the entrance. For a moment, I just sat there, not thinking, not feeling, just blank. Then, slowly, the fog lifted, and all that remained was anger, sharp, precise, clean. My phone buzzed that evening, an unlisted number. I hesitated before answering. A voice came through, hurried and hushed. It's Melanie. Don't say my name out loud. Melanie had been my assistant 2 years ago, thoughtful, loyal. She left around the time things started to shift behind the scenes. I shouldn't be calling you, but you need to know, she said. They're telling people you've been unstable, that you've sent threatening messages. They're using the report you filed last year as proof. I felt my jaw tighten. You mean the one outlining the misuse of capital during Q3? I asked. Yes, she said. They're twisting it, saying you lashed out emotionally, that they had to remove you for safety reasons. For whose safety? I asked bitterly. They're framing you as unpredictable, a liability. Even the new hires are told not to reach out if you contact them, like you're radioactive. I closed my eyes, listening to the betrayal stack itself into a tower of rot. They told one guy you tried to leverage your past help for control, like you were some power-hungry ghost haunting the brand. I nearly laughed at the absurdity. They were turning the truth into poison, one drop at a time. I shouldn't say more, Melanie added. I used a VPN just to call you. You did the right thing, I said. Thank you. The call ended. I stared at my reflection in the blank screen of my laptop. They hadn't just pushed me out. They'd painted me as the threat. That night, as city lights began to flicker outside, Victor finally called. The number lit up and my stomach curled, but I picked up. His voice was calm, too calm. Nadia, I sent you an email, I said. I saw it. And? You made yourself a liability. I kept the lights on when no one else could, I said, the words low and steady. And now I'm the problem? There were concerns, he replied. You were acting erratically. Our advisors agreed it was best to create distance. I laughed once, bitter and breathless. You didn't create distance, you detonated it. We had no choice. Then he hung up, just like that. I stood in the middle of my kitchen, barely hearing the kettle begin to whistle behind me. For a second I didn't move. Then I turned off the stove, poured water into the mug, and sat down. Slowly, like my body weighed more than usual. I reopened my old message to the board, the one Victor referenced. It was professional, factual, 2 pages of charts, flagged transactions, Inconsistencies in payroll dates. No threats, no emotion, just truth. And somehow, that truth made me a villain. I grabbed my pen and wrote in my journal. They silenced me not because I was wrong, but because I was right. I stared at the sentence for a long time, then circled it. They wanted war? They picked the wrong woman. I didn't sleep, I didn't pace, I didn't cry. Instead, I deleted the folder labeled Bored Emails from my drive. A folder I had once curated with hope, hoping dialogue might be enough, that data and dignity would convince them to do the right thing. Then I opened a new one. I named it Reckoning. This wasn't about fairness anymore. It was about exposure, about accountability, about truth, even if it scorched the earth. By morning, a message popped into my inbox. The sender's name was unfamiliar, Ellie Owl 88. No subject, no text, just a single audio attachment with one line. You need to hear this. I hesitated, scanned the file, checked the metadata. It had been recorded 3 days ago inside the company offices. I clicked play, a crackle of background noise, then my mother's voice, crisp and chillingly calm. If she wants to be dramatic, let her. Just make sure she's nowhere near press or staff. We need this to stay clean. Clean, like I was filth, like I was contamination control. The call ended with murmurs of agreement, polite chuckles. One voice added, "We'll keep her name off everything moving forward." I replayed it twice, then a third time slower. My mother wasn't just ignoring me, she was instructing others to erase me. The same woman who once pulled me out of swim class early so I wouldn't get tired before finals was now treating me like a stain to scrub out of their perfect picture. I saved the file, encrypted it, and labeled it mothersorders.mp3. Before I could even process the ache forming behind my ribs, another ping lit up my screen. This one wasn't anonymous. It was from Darren, a quiet engineer who had worked with me for years. Attached were screenshots from the company's internal Slack channels, messages between Levon and several senior team members. Levon: "She's off the rails." Manager A: "Do we need to be worried?" Levon: "She's not a threat, just obsessed with herself. Classic narcissist meltdown." Intern: "She sent me a weird email last year, totally unhinged." Levon: "You should have seen her during that audit. Paranoid as hell." I scrolled further, numb but strangely focused. A recent LinkedIn post praised Levon for transforming a family crisis into a generational win. Hundreds of likes. Comments flooded in. One that caught my eye. "Jealous little sister syndrome. It's always the quiet ones who implode." I stared at it, and stared, until my eyes burned. Then I shut the laptop, walked to the kitchen, and knocked over my coffee mug by accident. The liquid spread across the table, fast, chaotic, unforgiving, like everything else lately. I grabbed a towel and started blotting aggressively. I wasn't imploding. I was done being polite. I dialed Victor. He picked up on the third ring. No preamble, just my name, Nadia, like it tasted bitter coming out of his mouth. "I know about the payout to Melanie," I said. "I know about the gag order, and I know you used company funds to shut her up." He didn't deny it. "It was complicated," he said, voice tired. "We did what we had to avoid more damage." "To whom?" I asked. "The truth doesn't damage things that deserve to survive." Victor exhaled heavily. "It wasn't personal." "Then why did you make it a family business if loyalty was optional?" I shot back. "Why take my money, use my silence, then turn me into the villain?" Another pause. "Don't make this messier than it already is." "I didn't make the mess," I said. "I just stopped cleaning it up." Then I hung up. I sat for a moment, staring at the call log. My hand shook, but not from fear, from clarity. I opened a new Word document and titled it, "Statement to Investors, Draft." Every word was careful, intentional. I listed timelines, transaction trails, misappropriated budgets. I cited employee gag orders, falsified marketing claims, whistleblower retaliation. No adjectives, just facts. When I was finished, I didn't hit send. Instead, I printed the draft and folded it. I placed it beside my bed, under the lamp, where I would see it every night before sleeping. That was my new alarm clock. Because I knew now there was no room for more warnings. They had shown me who they were. They didn't just lie. They paid to keep others from telling the truth, and that's where I draw the line. I had just started boiling water for tea when the ping hit my inbox. It wasn't dramatic, no red warning, no urgent subject line screaming at me, just one quiet, cold email with the subject, Final Clarification, Legal Notice. It was from Larissa's personal attorney. I opened it. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I was beyond those reactions now. What I read was deliberate, sterile, and absolute. Per Section 12 of the Family Business Contract, Nadia Knox is no longer recognized as a stakeholder or kin in financial matters, effective immediately. One sentence. That's all it took to cut me out. Not just from the company, but from the family ledger. It was a legal exorcism. No emotion, just terms and clauses. I let the kettle keep whistling. Later that night, I sat cross-legged on the floor of my living room, surrounded by receipts, login tokens, and old statements. I pulled out my backup drive and opened what I had labeled months ago as Shadow Archive. It didn't take long. Among the remnants of my old admin credentials, I found traces. Just enough to follow a thread. A withdrawal from the company account tagged Temporary Assistance. Date, 2 years ago. Amount, $48,000. Origin, Larissa's personal routing number. It was the same amount I had wired for inventory restructuring. I pulled up the old email exchange. We're stuck with unsellable stock. Can you cover it for now? I'll return it before Q3. That's what she'd said. There was no inventory, no restructuring, just an overdue payment on her private line of credit. It was personal debt, dressed up in a business memo, no record of repayment, no acknowledgement, no shame. I leaned back against the couch and exhaled, the air catching in my throat. Betrayal didn't come with fire anymore. It came with stillness. Then came Victor. I dug deeper. A $200,000 line of credit opened under the company's name. I cross-referenced it with 3 flagged transactions marked as employee expense corrections, except they weren't connected to any employee I knew. A few calls later, I confirmed it through the bank's legal department. The line had been used to cover Victor's legal consultation during a personal business lawsuit and his back surgery. The funds were pulled from an account that had once been seeded by me, $5 million strong. This wasn't mismanagement, I whispered aloud. This was theft. I wasn't looking for revenge. I wasn't trying to take back what was already lost. But I wasn't about to let them keep using my name to clean their messes. I made an appointment with someone I trusted, Kira, an attorney I'd worked with during my early investor days. She greeted me at her downtown Denver office, offered coffee, and sat without judgment as I laid it all out. I'm not here to sue, I told her. She tilted her head. Then what do you want? I want a firewall. I want them legally banned from using my name, my money, or any ties to my brand or history in future dealings. If they claim I was involved, there needs to be a record showing I wasn't. Kira's eyes narrowed. You understand what that implies? It implies I'm done letting them rewrite the script. She nodded. It also implies they're going to retaliate. They already did, I said. This isn't a fire I started, I just stopped putting it out. That night, back in my apartment, I sat at the kitchen table and drafted the letter. To the Board of Directors. Subject: Official notification of financial breach and severance of representation. I laid out everything, chronologically, cleanly. I attached scanned screenshots of statements, timelines of unauthorized activity, even quotes from NDA-protected conversations I now knew had been weaponized. I didn't accuse. I documented. At the bottom I wrote, if your silence continues, legal transparency begins. I didn't send it yet. I printed it, folded it twice, slid it into an envelope I'd already addressed. I'd drop it at the post office in the morning, certified. Let them scramble. Let them prepare whatever rebuttal or denial they needed. Because this time, I had the receipts. And if they wanted war, they just got it. On record, in writing, and backed by every ounce of truth they tried to bury. Morning came fast. The envelope was still sitting where I'd left it the night before, on the edge of the counter, next to the toaster. I had barely touched my coffee when my phone buzzed. A message from Elliot Green. Subject: You need to see this before it's deleted. My thumb hovered for half a second before tapping. Attached. A PDF. Clean, neatly formatted. I recognized the email headers immediately. It was internal, a full thread. At the top, from Larissa to their family lawyer. What we need is a clean legal strategy to push Nadia out. No signature needed. She's an emotional risk. No confrontation, just resolution. The timestamp? 2 days after I wired my last $500,000. My heart didn't race. It didn't have to. The rage was slow and familiar now. No longer heat, just clarity. They weren't scrambling to protect the business. They were planning a quiet coup, and I had funded it. The rest of the email laid out everything: how they'd rewrite the bylaws to exclude me from all votes, reclassify my shares as non-assertive capital, and ensure I held no legal claim to managerial input. Larissa had even ended the email with, "Let her scream, we'll say she's just not well." That line sat in my chest like lead. I stood up, poured my coffee into the sink, took a long breath. Then, as if summoned by the storm itself, my phone rang again. Victor. I should have let it go to voicemail, but I didn't. "Hello?" His voice came through with practiced softness. "Nadia, I know things have gotten complicated, but just say it." A pause, then, "Your mother's not well. Supplier payments are behind. We need one more bridge, just until Q1, then we're clear." I laughed. I couldn't help it. "You erased me from the books. Now you want me to write another check?" "It's not like that," he said, lowering his tone. "Family is still family." I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "No, you don't get to use that word anymore. Not after burying me in fine print." He didn't answer. I ended the call without saying goodbye. A few hours later, I opened my blog's admin inbox, something I hadn't checked in days. There it was, a forward from a reader. "Thought you'd want to see this." Attached was a screenshot from Reddit, a thread titled, "The Real Story Behind the Knox Split." The poster claimed I was fired for embezzlement, said I'd emotionally blackmailed staff and manipulated figures. Another comment from a burner account. Her brother Levon saved the business after she cracked under pressure. I scrolled down. One username stood out. It linked back to a former PR intern. Someone who had once told me, wide-eyed, that I inspired her. They were turning the narrative. This wasn't just strategy anymore. It was character assassination. I saved every screenshot, labeled the folder, Defamation Suite Prep, because I wasn't just fighting for my name, I was building a shield they'd never get past again. That night I sat in silence for a long time. No music, no TV, just the city outside, breathing heavy in autumn wind. I curled my knees to my chest and let the grief pass through me, just once. A single wave. Not because I was breaking, but because I refused to carry this with numbness anymore. Then I got up. I walked to my desk, pulled open the bottom drawer, took out the official shareholder transfer agreement, the one they never expected me to sign. The final page was blank. I took my pen. October 11th, 2024. I signed, not because they deserved closure, but because I did. They had their chance to keep me close. Now they'll have to watch from far away, permanently. The next morning, I woke to the soft hum of my coffee pot and sunlight leaking through the blinds. There was no dread, just a sense of finality. The signed agreement sat in my bag, sandwiched between two folders. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my coat, walked to the nearest FedEx location, and handed the envelope to the clerk. "Certified, signature required," I said. "Recipient?" she asked. I smiled faintly. "Women Forward Foundation, ATN Amy Tran." She keyed it in, and I paid without a second glance. When I stepped outside, the air hit different, lighter. It was done. Later that afternoon, I opened my laptop and sent a single message to Amy. Do more with this than I ever could. I attached the formal share transfer confirmation. She was now the sole beneficiary of what used to be my stake, what used to be my legacy. The company I saved no longer had my name attached to it. Not legally, not emotionally, not even in memory. A few hours passed. Then came the retaliation. An internal email from the board somehow made its way to my inbox. Leaked, no doubt, by someone who still had a spine. Larissa had authored it. Nadia made her own choices. We didn't abandon her. She abandoned us, at the company's weakest moment. Victor took it further. I saw a message he'd sent privately to a select investor group. Knox Family Organics collapsed structurally when one key party chose exit over resolve. The narrative was flipped. Neatly, I was now the one who walked away. The one who turned her back on family values. By the following morning, 3 of my old contacts had stopped replying to my messages. A journalist I'd worked with before ghosted me on a scheduled call. They weren't just rewriting the ending, they were trying to erase the whole book. I opened a draft post. Title: The Truth Behind the $5 Million Rescue. I pulled in screenshots, dated emails, bank receipts, shareholder terms. It was watertight. Then I stared at the publish button. It hovered there, blinking like it was daring me. But after a moment, I closed the tab. I didn't owe the world my pain just to validate my version of the truth. Instead, I opened a different document, one I hadn't touched in over a year. It was a letter I had started writing to myself on my 30th birthday. A letter to my younger self. That same version of me who thought success would make her safe, that loyalty guaranteed love. I wrote 2 more paragraphs, then signed it, "Love me, now," and saved it. That afternoon, I walked to a park I hadn't visited in years. It was still the same: gravel paths, fading benches, and a mural of butterflies painted near the playground. I used to come here when I was a teenager, headphones on, notebook in hand, dreaming about the kind of future I wanted to build. Now I had lived it, and lost it, and built something better. I sat on the bench and let myself exhale fully for the first time in weeks. No more checking behind me, no more waiting for an apology that would never come, just silence and peace. I pulled out one final envelope from my bag, this one addressed to the legal team at Knox Family Organics. A cease and desist, short, sharp. Cease defamation activity or legal action proceeds. I dropped it into the outgoing box at the postal kiosk near the park gate. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like maintenance, like closing a file folder so I could clear space. That evening, Amy called. She didn't ask if I was okay. She didn't need to. "I just wanted to let you know," she said. "We've already launched a microgrant program with your transfer. 5 women-led businesses have received funding, one of them starting a food co-op, another, a mobile therapy van for underserved neighborhoods." I didn't cry. I just smiled, real, small, and solid. "You didn't just leave something behind," Amy said. "You built a way forward." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "Thank you, Amy," I said. Truly. After the call, I didn't turn on the TV. I didn't scroll through social media. I sat in the dark with a cup of tea and thought about what it means to walk away before a place burns you from the inside out. They took my silence as surrender, but I wasn't silent. I was healing. The kettle whistled softly in the background as I checked my inbox, expecting the usual foundation updates or a note from Amy. But what caught my eye wasn't from anyone I knew. Subject: When Founders Are Forgotten, the hidden story of Knox Organics. It was an industry blog, mid-tier, independent, the kind of site execs snubbed, but insiders read religiously. I wasn't the source. But someone, somewhere, had seen enough. The article pulled no punches. It tracked the early rise of the company, the sudden silence around its real investor, and linked the timeline with shareholder data, still public if you knew where to look. The final paragraph posed a question. What happens when those who build the house are written out of the address? It spread fast. No dramatic headlines, no explosive lawsuits, just quiet accountability that moved through back channels like cold air under a door. A few days later, news slipped out that Larissa had been quietly removed as CEO after a late-night board vote. No press conference, no handoff ceremony, just a short notice in a shareholder bulletin. Executive transition, effective immediately. Victor issued a vague apology via an internal memo, something about misalignment of vision and regret for misunderstandings. I didn't bother reading it all. And Lavon? His social pages went dark. A whispered harassment suit surfaced, connected to an event 2 years ago. No one seemed surprised. They just nodded, like it all made sense now. There were no fireworks, no crowd-pleasing collapse, just erasure, the same way they'd tried to erase me. 2 weeks later, I received a letter, handwritten, slanted script, no return address. Dear Nadia, I know we haven't spoken since the day I walked out of the logistics office. I didn't have the courage then. But when I heard you refuse to be quiet, when I saw someone stand up, even with everything to lose, I realized maybe I could speak too. You made it easier for people like me to say what's true. Thank you for not staying quiet. Melanie. I read it twice, then placed it inside a small wooden box I kept beneath my bed, labeled, kept, not forgotten. That afternoon, I stood before a small crowd of women at a community center, hosted by Amy's foundation. The room was nothing flashy, folding chairs, mismatched mugs of coffee, but the energy inside? Real. I didn't read from a script. I didn't name names or mention dollar amounts. I simply said, power isn't in what they take from you, it's in what you choose never to give again. They clapped, not wildly, not like I delivered some great victory speech, but steady, respectful. Some even stood. And I didn't flinch. Later that week, I visited the new co-working space our foundation had helped fund, an open, sunlit office for women starting their first ventures. I wasn't on the board. I didn't run it. I just came to listen, mentor, and, once in a while, laugh again. One young founder, maybe 25, looked up at me after a brainstorming session. "What happened to your family?" she asked, hesitant. I paused. There was so much I could say, pages worth. But I simply replied, "They taught me how to walk away with grace." And I smiled. Not because I was over it, but because I was moving forward anyway. I didn't need a parade. I didn't want revenge. I wasn't waiting for someone to tell me I'd won. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about no longer needing to. They closed their doors on me, but I opened mine and walked through. I used to think walking away meant failure, that letting go meant weakness. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to stop proving your worth to people who benefit from your silence. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Your peace is worth more than their approval. Your value isn't up for negotiation, especially not with those who only remember you when they need saving. Maybe you've been the one who gave too much, stayed too long, or tried too hard to be accepted by the people who should have protected you first. If that's you, please hear me when I say, you are allowed to choose yourself. You don't owe anyone your breakdown to earn your breakthrough. So now, I want to ask you, have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to protect who you are? Or maybe you're still standing at that edge, wondering if you can take that first step. If this story touched something deep in you, drop a 1 in the comments so I know I'm not alone. Or let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear your story too. And hey, if this kind of storytelling speaks to you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what's next. Real stories, real emotion, real people, just like you. You deserve healing, you deserve honesty, and most of all, you deserve to be heard.
It's been so long, I can't control myself. That's what Nancy whispered in my ear. Her soft voice made my pulse quicken, and I felt heat spreading through my body. I never imagined something like this would happen at my workplace. My name is Bob Harrison. I'm a 32-year-old bachelor working at a major electronics manufacturer. It's a big corporation, and people admired me. But recently, I've been demoted. Bob, give your best at your new place. You're better off working in the country than slaving away at headquarters, the director said to me with a smirk. He was the one who sent me off to this subsidiary, often referred to as exile. He's known for his oppressive attitude towards employees he dislikes, and recently, I was his main target. He criticized everything I did and continually put me down. For example, when I asked about specific corrections on documents he shredded without reading, he just told me to figure it out myself. Catering to his reckless whims was truly exhausting. The director supposedly married the niece of the CEO for his career advancement, creating an unquestioning atmosphere in the company. Despite his poor reputation for womanizing and his harsh treatment of subordinates, I had a strong sense of loyalty to the company. I thought overcoming adversity would help me grow as a person. No matter what the director did, I was determined not to give in. When my demotion was decided, The director seemed extremely pleased. As someone who worked at headquarters, this transfer was a shock, but I steeled myself to face the challenge. I couldn't let my mother down, who was watching over me from heaven. I still remember her pale face in the hospital bed, trying to cheer me up. "I will always be watching over you from heaven," she said. I tear up remembering her gentle smile. My mother passed away around the time I went to college. My father was the worst when I was a child, and my mother protected me from his abuse. She raised me on her own, always smiling and showering me with love despite being busy with work and housework. I could never thank her enough. If I were to complain now, my mother would be sad. So, with determination, I set off for my new post. The place I was transferred to was a peaceful countryside. The environment was comfortable, and the folks at my new position were kind-hearted. I enjoyed my work. Despite it being a less prestigious role, I didn't slack off. Instead, I did my absolute best. I believed that if I kept up the hard work, it wouldn't be a dream to get a promotion. Indeed, a year after being shifted to this new position, I had made significant accomplishments in my work and began receiving recognition. This fact made me relieved. Just when I breathed a sigh of relief, I received an interesting proposition from a colleague named Todd. "Hey Bob, how about we go to the party for singles?" "A party?" "Yeah, you don't seem to have a girlfriend either, so it's a chance to meet someone." As Bob pointed out, I didn't have a girlfriend at the moment. It's a bit embarrassing to admit, but I had no experience with dating in my life. When I was at the head office, I had many opportunities to be invited to social gatherings, but I was always busy with the manager's rigorous workload and chased by stress. So, I couldn't find the mood for romance. But now, with some breathing room, it seemed like the perfect timing to seek new connections. I'm almost 33, and I'd like to get married at some point. With that in mind, I decided to participate in the party. But it didn't go as smoothly as I expected. The party was held at a luxury hotel, and many more participants gathered than I anticipated. I couldn't communicate well with the women and ended up feeling isolated. This wouldn't happen in a business context, but casual chit-chat seemed difficult for me, who had been submerged in work. In contrast to me, Todd, with his social and lively character, was making vibrant conversations with many women. Neither Todd nor I were particularly handsome, but despite this, the difference in our situations left me feeling disappointed. I thought the women at the party probably saw me as a boring guy. When I was feeling down, I suddenly heard a voice. "Excuse me, may I talk to you?" When I lifted my gaze, I was astonished. Standing in front of me was a woman of unbelievable beauty. I was so captivated by her, who looked as if she could have stepped right out of a TV show, that I couldn't even look away. "Of course, I've been looking for someone to talk to since I came to the party. You were alone too, so I thought I'd come and talk," she said with a gracious smile. "I guess everyone's too intimidated to approach because you're so beautiful." "Oh, you're a smooth talker." "Not at all. It's just that I've never had a proper conversation with a woman other than my mother, and so here I am in this situation." "Oh, you have a good relationship with your mother. That's wonderful." "Yes, she passed away when I was in high school, but she was truly a good mother." "Oh, I'm sorry." When I mentioned that my mother had passed away, she looked genuinely sorry. But of course, it wasn't her fault. It was me who brought up my mother all of a sudden. But actually, I lost my mother when I was young too. "Really?" Whether it was a blessing in disguise or not, we started to talk about our mothers. At first, I was frustrated with myself for not being able to converse smoothly, but as time passed, I found myself chatting naturally with her. She was not only beautiful, but also had a very friendly personality. Before I knew it, I was not only fascinated by her appearance, but also by her dazzling smile and gentle manner. Oh, what a joy it would be to have a girlfriend just like her. Just as I was thinking this, the host of the party gave instructions to the participants through a microphone. All right, everyone, we will now be ending the talking time. If you're interested in someone, please write down their badge number on the sheet we distributed at the beginning. I nodded at her and left to join Bob. Her badge had the number 28 on it. There's no way I would match with her, but I wrote down 28 and handed the sheet to the party organizer. I had a great time with such an attractive woman. That was enough for me. With those thoughts, I was looking up at the stage of the party when the host started to announce the results. At the end of the party, we will introduce the men and women who had successfully paired up. Now let's start with male number 2 and female number 6. Congratulations on becoming a couple. Each time the host said this, a man and a woman ascended to the stage and were introduced. Before I knew it, the venue had transformed into a festive mood filled with a peculiar heat. Todd, too, had successfully paired up and ascended the stage. Todd's partner was a slender, adorable woman, and the spectators were all worked up. When the spectators called for a kiss, Todd, going along with the flow, kissed the back of his partner's hand like a prince, eliciting laughter from the audience. Before I knew it, I was carried away by the atmosphere, watching the proceedings and laughing. However, upon hearing the host's announcement, my mind went blank. Now, next we have male number 19 and female number 28. Please come up to the stage. I looked at my own badge, and, indeed, my number was 19. Hey Bob, you're being called, urged Todd. I finally headed towards the stage. There, the woman from before was already waiting for me. I never dreamed that she and I would be paired. What a beauty she is! The lucky number 19 man must be over the moon when the host said this. The audience chimed in with comments like, "Hey, handsome." It was one thing to be an observer, but being the center of attention was unbearably embarrassing. It seemed like she felt the same, her face turning a deep red. But then the audience made a further demand of us, just like they had with Todd and Lear. They called for a kiss. I was petrified and didn't know how to respond, but I couldn't just stand there on stage forever. As I was struggling, the woman next to me gave a quick peck on my cheek. In that moment, my mind went blank again as I was surrounded by cheering. I never imagined I would kiss a woman in such a way. Finally, we were allowed to step down from the stage, and she and I looked at each other. I never imagined that I'd be paired with you in my wildest dreams. Me neither, but let's drop the formalities now that we're a couple. Okay, can I ask your name? I'm Nancy Miller. Nice to meet you. Saying so, Nancy extended her hand like a lily. I touched it, feeling my heart pounding. I'm Bob Harrison. Nice to meet you. After ending the party like that, Nancy and I decided to chat for a bit in the hotel lounge. We still knew little about each other. Wow, what a night. Who knew a matchmaking party would get everyone so fired up? I was surprised too. And while it was only for about an hour, Nancy and I talked more about each other. Nancy was 30, and she had been in another country until last year, but she preferred being in Japan. When I told her where I work, Nancy looked surprised. Oh, you work at that electronics manufacturer? Yeah. Why? Something wrong? No, it's just a big company. I felt a little strange about Nancy's reaction, but we exchanged contact details and parted ways. We agreed to go out for a meal another time. We were both working adults, so coordinating our schedules would be a bit of a hassle. But little did I know, an unexpected development was waiting for me. A week after meeting Nancy, a new manager was assigned to our division and was introduced. During the morning meeting, I was nervous about meeting the new boss, but when I saw who it was, I was at a loss for words. The one who was there was me, in a relationship with a woman named Nancy Miller. It's Miss Nancy Miller who has been promoted to the position of section chief. Until last year, she was abroad gaining experience, they announced. I'm Nancy Miller. Nice to meet all of you, she exclaimed. In stark contrast to my shock, Nancy maintained her poker face as she greeted everyone. However, I did not miss her gaze towards me and the silent, later message she sent through eye contact. Then Nancy and I gathered in the break room. "Why are you here?" I asked. "I'm sorry. I really wanted to tell you, but I had to keep it a secret due to confidentiality," she replied with an apologetic expression. As for me, I had no intention of blaming her. I was just taken aback by this surprising coincidence. However, Nancy cast a worried look my way. "Do you mind having your girlfriend as your boss?" she asked. "No, not at all. I like you, Nancy." I stuttered upon hearing this. Her face lit up with happiness. "Me too. I really like you, Bob. I get so nervous and blush whenever I'm around you," she admitted. Indeed, her face was crimson red. "It's been a long time since I felt this way. My body isn't listening to me," she confessed, whispering in my ear. Her whisper sent my heart racing and my body grew hot. I could not have imagined that such a turn of events would happen in the office. But honestly, I didn't mind that Nancy was my boss. She was a very talented individual. Upon our reunion at the office, we confirmed our feelings for each other and officially started dating. We didn't make our relationship public, but I was able to work happily with her. I felt like I might have a special connection with Nancy. Such happy days passed, but a new incident occurred 1 month after we started dating. Surprisingly, the director who had transferred me came to see me on the name of a routine inspection. Looking at the director with a meaningful expression, I had a bad feeling. "Long time, no see, Bob," he said. "Hello," I responded. "I'm sure you're finding this new place quite comfortable. I came today to make sure you can continue working here." He added, "Pardon?" as I widened my eyes in surprise. The director, laughingly, continued, "Well, there are talks of bringing you back to headquarters, but you prefer it here, don't you? So, I came to ask the director to let you stay." In other words, the director was there to prevent my return to headquarters. I trembled at the director's deviousness. "Director, you—" No, no, quite the opposite. If anything, you should be grateful. That's something I'll discuss with my father." Suddenly, Nancy appeared. On seeing her, the director's face turned pale. Nancy, why are you here?" he stammered. "Didn't you know I'm here to learn on my father's orders?" she responded. "What? What do you mean by that?" I asked. "Nancy's father, Bob." "What are you saying?" the director demanded. "Nancy is the president's daughter. Be respectful." At that moment, everything clicked into place in my mind. The president's last name was Miller too. No matter how much the director was a relative of the president, he would never dare to disrespect Nancy, the president's daughter. "There are also other unpleasant rumors about you. I plan to report everything to my father. Just you wait." No wait. With that, the director collapsed on the spot. It seemed that the fact that Nancy was the president's daughter was only known to a few executives. Afterwards, thanks to Nancy reporting everything to the president, the director's reputation took a nosedive, and he ultimately left the company. Apparently, his wife also took this opportunity to investigate the director's personal life, confronting him with numerous proofs of infidelity. Having betrayed his wife as well, the director apparently had no choice but to leave the company. The director is now said to be living alone, chased by child support payments for his children. What goes around comes around. I was surprised to find out that Nancy was the president's daughter, but of course, my feelings for her haven't changed. "Do you mind that I'm the president's daughter? Are you sure I'm good enough?" she asked me. When I asked her that, she gave me a kiss on my cheek. So, a year after we met, we both received recognition for our achievements and were assigned to work at the headquarters, continuing our relationship while working. Another year later, when things had settled down, we got married. I was worried whether the president would accept me, but he readily gave his approval. About this matter, Nancy said, "I think my father saw a lot of himself in you, Bob." "What do you mean?" I asked. "Like you, my father has been working hard to grow the company despite the loss of my beloved mother. You remind him of himself, and I fell in love with that side of you. Nancy, even when times are tough, as long as you don't give up and keep looking forward. Heaven never helps the men who will not act." I looked up at the sky and once again said thank you to my mother for bringing such a good match into my life.
Nice to meet you all. From today, I'll be working here. My name is George, and I'm looking forward to collaborating with all of you. At 45, I had to change jobs. An accident injured my leg, making it hard for me to walk. In my previous job, I was active in field sales, but now that's impossible. When I decided to switch jobs, my boss tried to find something for me, but fieldwork was the main focus there. I didn't want to burden the company, so I moved on. I was married to my college sweetheart at 30, but we divorced 3 years later. I was too focused on work and neglected my family. When my wife brought up divorce, I was so shocked I couldn't eat for a while. It took time, but I've recovered and feel positive again. Since the divorce, I haven't had a girlfriend. Not because I'm not a ladies' man, but because I don't feel like being in a relationship. Because of the accident, I can't move quickly, so physically demanding jobs are out. That's why I shifted to this company, where desk work is the primary focus. I'm not very good with computers, so getting hired here feels like a miracle. My mentor here is Emily. She's 33 and a team leader, younger than me. She's known for her beauty and efficiency at work, but she's quite reserved. I didn't know how to interact with her, and it seemed she didn't like me. When I greeted her with a smile, she quickly handed me some documents and said, "Please get started on this." I'm not a quick learner and tend to make the same mistakes repeatedly. Whenever I messed up, Emily would say without looking up, "Please try not to create more work for others." Even when I apologized, she wouldn't respond. Some colleagues seemed to enjoy watching me get scolded. One of them was Mike. He's the same age as Emily and joined the company at the same time. Rumor has it Mike has a crush on Emily. He's good-looking with a refreshing demeanor and one of the top performers. But to be blunt, Mike is kind of a jerk. He's nice to the attractive employees but cold to others. I once overheard him rank female employees saying things like, "I don't talk to women below an 8. Since I was having a hard time picking up on the work, he'd mocked me saying, "Maybe that's why your wife left you." George. Being new to the company, I couldn't outright deny it and could only manage a wry smile. Sometime later, my welcome party was held at the company. That day, I got to chat with colleagues I hadn't talked to before and had a great time. As the party was winding down, one of the colleagues suggested we should all go skiing or something next time. Immediately, that colleague glanced at my leg and awkwardly suggested an alternative. Actually, forget skiing. How about a food tour instead? While others agreed, saying, "Sounds good," I felt guilty for making everyone consider my condition. But then Mike chimed in, "You know, I actually have these special skiing invitations. I have enough for everyone. How about we all go?" The other coworkers replied, but looking at me with an uncomfortable expression. "Just go on without me. I'm not as young as the rest of you. Have a good time with the younger folks," I said. Suddenly, Mike burst out laughing. "What are you talking about? I never intended to invite you, George, in the first place. You just slow us down." It was clear Mike was heavily drunk, acting much worse than usual. Another coworker defended me, saying, "That's a bit too much, don't you think?" But Mike didn't care. Getting even more drunk, he mocked, "Being single at 45. Things must be tough for you." Then, placing his hand on Emily's shoulder, he said, "Poor Emily, maybe I should be the one training you." As I was pondering how to respond, Emily, who was nearby, rebuked, "Stop making baseless comments. I'm George's mentor here. And Mike, you've had too much. Maybe cool down in the restroom or something." Seeing Emily's calm demeanor, the room went silent. Mike was probably at a loss for words. On our way home, I thanked Emily. Thank you for earlier. No problem, she simply replied and said nothing more. During those days, I'd heard a rumor. Apparently, Emily had turned down Mike's advances. In fact, Mike had previously spoken well of Emily, but suddenly he began bad-mouthing her behind her back. She thinks she's all that just because she's pretty. I've heard she's leading multiple guys on. Women like her get too engrossed in their work and miss their chance to settle down. And so on. With Mike continuously putting down Emily, other coworkers would remark, "Man, he's such a small-minded guy." But Mike was oblivious to it all. A while later, Emily was handed a major business deal. She worked overtime daily, meticulously preparing the documents. I could see the fatigue in her eyes, and I'm sure she continued working even at home. Then, the night before the deal, as I was working late, I noticed Mike acting suspiciously near Emily's desk. What's he up to? When I approached him, he snapped, "What do you want?" Curious, I inquired about his actions, to which he replied with a smirk, "None of your business," and walked away. I had a bad feeling about this, and my suspicions were confirmed. Emily failed the business deal. Instead of the required documents, she ended up distributing unrelated papers to the client. Upon returning to the office, Emily was severely reprimanded by the boss. "What were you thinking?" "I'm truly sorry, but I had checked the contents of the envelope the day before, and everything was in order. The cover was the same, but the inside documents were switched," Emily replied. I was shocked. I thought maybe someone mistakenly placed it on my desk. Who would do such a thing? Who would create a document just to switch the inside? Think of a better excuse. Emily was visibly shaken and red-faced. It seemed that during the business meeting, the client said it was unacceptable and was very upset. Could it be? Recalling Mike's actions the previous night, it hit me. He did something to her documents. He set Emily up. I'm sure of it. When I glanced over at Mike, he was enjoying watching Emily being scolded with a smirk. I knew it. I was sure. During the lunch break, I approached Mike. "Can we talk for a sec?" "What do you want, old man?" I straight up asked him. "Did you switch Emily's documents?" Without hiding anything, he replied, "Yeah, so. I kind of want to give that woman a taste of her own medicine." "What are you thinking? Sabotaging her work just because you got rejected is messed up, right? Emily worked so hard for that day. Tell your boss the truth now. Shut up. Stay out of this, old man." With that, he bumped into me on purpose and walked away. That guy. I knew it. Realizing Mike was the culprit, I couldn't stay silent. I immediately told the truth to my boss, but the boss didn't even consider it. It was hard to believe that Mike, who was competent and had been with the company for many years, would set up a colleague. I wish I had recorded what Mike said that day. Emily looked so down. She had worked so hard every day, and it was unforgivable for her to be treated so terribly. I wanted to protect her by revealing the truth somehow. I was getting frustrated as I couldn't figure out how. One day, I overheard a colleague saying, "Emily might be transferred to the regional branch." I heard the directors talking about it earlier. It seemed Emily also heard about this. She murmured in a low voice, "It's over for me. Maybe I should just accept the transfer quietly." Made the representative of AB Trading Company so angry it can't be helped. I was surprised to hear that. "You just mentioned AB Trading Company." "Yes, you know it right. It's a big company." "Emily, don't give up yet. We can definitely do something about this." Will you trust me with this?" "Huh." Emily made a shocked expression at those words. Soon after, I made a call to a person. "Hello, long time no see. It's George. Sorry for calling suddenly. Co. Johnson, the company that Emily failed in the big deal with, was my former employer." I was surprised to hear the company name from her. I never mentioned my previous job, and I hadn't told anyone the company's name. I was so close to the CEO of my previous company, Mr. Johnson, that we occasionally went out for drinks. Co. Johnson is a young company CEO who is 3 years younger than me, and he is quite strict about his work. But he's a person who appreciates the hard work of his subordinates, and I respect him a lot. Even if you don't get results, the process of your efforts is important. He always said. I didn't have any talent, but my only strength was my effort, and fortunately, Coach Johnson always appreciated me. In fact, there is a connection between me and the CEO. He has a young son, and I once saved him from a traffic accident. On my way to work one day, I saw a boy trying to cross the road in front of me, and a truck was coming towards him. However, the boy did not notice this and continued walking. "Watch out." With that shout, I pushed the boy out of danger. The boy was safe, but I ended up with a lingering injury in my leg. The boy I saved turned out to be the son of Coach Johnson. That day, Mr. Johnson had left his work phone at home, and since his son had the day off from school, he was on his way to deliver it to the office when the incident happened. I don't regret saving his son. I decided to leave the company partly because I couldn't do field sales anymore, but also because I felt my presence would make Mr. Johnson feel guilty and cause him pain. So I chose to distance myself from that company. Before I quit, Mr. Johnson told me, "If there's anything I can do for you, just let me know. I'll do whatever I can to help." I remembered him saying that. After hanging up with Mr. Johnson, I shared the news with my colleague Emily. The CEO himself is coming to talk to us. Thank you. I had no idea the client was where you used to work, George. She was equally surprised. A few days later, Coach Johnson visited our office. Seeing me, he offered a smile, and I was also included in the meeting. "I'm really sorry for all the trouble," Emily apologized. In response to Emily's apologies, Coach Johnson calmly said, "Don't forget to check everything in advance. This is good manners as a member of society." "Yes, you're absolutely right. I'm deeply sorry," Emily continued to apologize. Mr. Johnson's expression softened. "I've heard about you from George. You prepared quite extensively for this project's negotiations. I'm eager to see the ideas you've come up with." "Yes, of course." After that, Emily presented the materials and started explaining to Mr. Johnson. And guess what? The deal was a success. Great project. It must have taken a lot of effort to research and compile this. We definitely like to collaborate with your company on this. Thank you so much. Emily was on the brink of tears with joy. Beforehand, our boss had told Coach Johnson about a colleague's harassment regarding this matter. Mr. Johnson had failed to investigate and just took his employee's word for it. High-ups were reprimanded for their behavior. Soon after, that colleague, Mike, was confronted and confessed his intentions to discredit Emily. He ended up getting demoted. On the other hand, Emily led the project to success, was recognized for her achievements, and got promoted from team leader to department head. I was genuinely happy for her, seeing her hard work pay off. One day, Emily approached me. "Thank you so much for everything, and I'm sorry for sometimes being presumptuous despite being younger," I responded to the apologetic Emily. "Don't worry about it. It never bothered me," Emily said. Then Emily added, "If you don't dislike me, I'd like to treat you to a meal sometime as a way of saying thanks." Surprised by the invitation, I blurted out, "Really? Are you sure?" Emily smiled and said, "Yes." It was the first time I saw her genuinely smile, and it gave me butterflies. Gradually, I got more used to the job and was trusted with significant tasks. I started going out with Emily for drinks occasionally, and we gradually deepened our friendship. I don't know what the future holds, but life is short. Hoping for more good times ahead, I continue to work diligently, facing my computer every day.
Hey, still rocking that old high school dropout style, huh? Today at the reunion, I ran into a classmate who used to mock me back in the day. Even now, as adults, he hasn't changed. He saw me, grabbed his wine glass, and poured it all over me. The rich aroma clung to me, and I felt terrible. "Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high life, high school dropout," he sneered. He hasn't changed a bit. I was beyond angry and filled with disappointment. That's when I made up my mind. My name is Mark. I grew up in a typical family with a self-employed dad and a stay-at-home mom. My childhood was pretty carefree. After school, I'd toss my backpack and play at the neighborhood park until dusk. But things changed when I hit middle school. My dad stopped coming home regularly because of work. He'd come home after I was in bed and leave before I woke up. On his rare days off, he'd take us to amusement parks or for drives. One late night, I saw my mom sighing over the household budget. "Mom, are you okay?" I asked. She smiled and said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Don't worry about anything." But I could see she was worn out. Dinner started to have fewer side dishes, and the fruits we used to enjoy disappeared. My lunch became plain rice with a few pickles. One day, Brad, a classmate, noticed my meager lunch and started picking on me. "Your dad ran off, didn't he? That's why you have such lame lunches," he laughed with his friends. I was furious but thought of my mom and held back. Brad was the son of the president of a local company and was seen as a model student by teachers. But he used his dad's status to bully others. My classmates, fearing him, began to avoid me. Brad's bullying escalated until one lunchtime. He approached me while I was eating in a secluded stairwell. Typical peasant's lunch, he sneered and reached for my lunchbox. I knocked his hand away, but he grabbed it and smashed it on the floor. Seeing the scattered food, I thought of my mom's effort. I grabbed Brad by the collar. "Think you can hit me? You know what'll happen," he taunted. I lost control and hit him. A teacher, alerted by the noise, dragged us to the office. "I'm so sorry," my mom said, bowing repeatedly. The teacher believed Brad's story and scolded me, while Brad faced no consequences. Faced with this blatant injustice, all I could do was endure. After the hellish guidance session, as my mother and I were leaving, the teacher spat out at me. "I'm worried about what kind of adult you'll become. Always resorting to violence. Can you even become a decent person? Just you watch." But our life became increasingly difficult. My mom's part-time job was not enough to make ends meet. Despite the violent incident with Brad, my mom believed in me to the end. Always kind, my mom was someone I didn't want to burden any further. So, with the sole desire to ease her burden, I decided not to pursue college and instead chose to work. Decades have since passed. Days whirl by, seasons change rapidly, and society evolves at a dizzying pace, brimming with new conveniences. Before I knew it, the familiar streets had transformed, and my bitter, dark adolescent years seemed to fade into the distance. It was around this time that I received an invitation to a middle school reunion. When I saw that letter, the image of Brad's sneering face came back to me. He would undoubtedly be there. Honestly, I wasn't keen on going, but we were all grown-ups now. Surely, he wouldn't start anything petty. With that thought, I decided to attend. "Hey Kev, long time no see. You look good." Being called by my nickname by a classmate, it felt like I was back in middle school. While many had drifted apart after the violence, a few classmates who remained friends through it all were there, and he was one of them. "Man, you've aged a bit, haven't you?" he said, patting his protruding belly. "You too," I replied. As we shared updates and reminisced, a familiar voice rang out. "Hey, you are here too, huh? Wow, Brad, that's you." He seemed quite drunk and was in high spirits. "Brad, you okay?" I was surprised at myself for expressing concern, but Brad, glaring fiercely, retorted, "A bottom feeder like you worrying about me. I haven't fallen that low. Listen up." Holding a wine glass, he boasted, "I run Bradley Merchandising. It's wise to stay on my good side." He laughed arrogantly, then peering into my face, he exclaimed, "Hey, the high school dropout. Still rocking that pathetic style, huh? Well, let me treat you to some fine wine today." With that, Brad held his wine glass over my head and poured the wine all over me. The surrounding crowd went silent, staring at us in a scene of total chaos. The reunion was completely ruined. The rich aroma clung to my entire body, leaving me feeling terrible. How about that? Bet you're thrilled to get a taste of the high life, high school dropout. He hadn't changed a bit from the times he used his privileged position to cause trouble. I was beyond angry, filled with disappointment, all my secret hopes shattered. Brad, I've made up my mind, I said. Decided about what? To Brad's mocking face, I delivered a stark announcement. You're fired. The room fell silent for a moment. Fired? What's that supposed to mean? High school dropout, can't even speak English, Brad asked, clearly baffled. But I said seriously, it means exactly what it sounds like. The crowd began to murmur. A former classmate tapped my shoulder and asked a question that seemed to float in everyone's mind. So, what do you do now? I currently work at a food company as renowned as Bradley Merchandising. Wiping my head, and faced with a handkerchief I took from my pocket, I started explaining, I'm in charge of corporate acquisitions, and I'm actually working on acquiring your company. As the next president, you should know this better than anyone. What? What are you talking about? Brad, trying to act tough, had his lips twitching and sweat on his forehead. President Johnson should have officially contacted you about this, right? Johnson? President? Wait, the company you work for is... Brad's face turned completely pale. Yes, I work for Johnson Merchandising, a company my father is the president of. After high school, I joined this company and now serve as an executive director overseeing the entire company. Deciding not to pursue college and instead, work was tough, as there were hardly any companies willing to hire someone with only a high school education. I couldn't afford to be choosy anymore. I applied for any job I could find and ended up working part-time at a logistics warehouse. However, the barrier due to my lack of education was thicker than I imagined. Once people learned about my educational background, their attitudes changed, and I was never considered for permanent employment. Would my life end just as a factory worker? Lost in despair, I was returning home from work one day when I encountered the unexpected. I'm home. Home, huh? Welcome back. There was my father, who I never thought I'd see again. He looked much older, with white hair mixed in. Despite his weak smile, the sight of him brought a surge of anger, thinking of all the hardships we endured. You just waltz back now. You have no idea how much we suffered. Then my father tearfully apologized. I'm sorry, honey. Mark, I'm truly sorry. I was so focused on getting the company on track that I neglected you. No excuse can change the fact that I caused you unnecessary hardship. I'm deeply sorry. My mother and I, without a word, just stared at him. I'm not asking for your forgiveness, but I want to at least apologize to you both in some way. The house was completely silent. Eventually, my mother spoke up. Regardless, I'm thankful. You've come back. Things might not go back to how they were, but I do want to try and rebuild our family little by little. But there's a condition. What is it? Give this boy a full-time job at your company. What? I turned to my mother in surprise. Mark has been working hard since he decided not to go to high school. He should be enjoying his youth like others his age, but due to his educational background, he'd have struggled to find a full-time position. My mother's face was serious, almost frighteningly so. How much time had passed? All right, Mark can work at our company, but on one condition. He must take the GED. Understand? There was a sense of earnestness in my father's voice, his concern for my future. Evident, considering I had to give up high school to work. And so, I stepped up from a factory temp to an employee at a renowned company. Of course, it wasn't easy at first. In fact, it was a continuous struggle. Being the president's son made me a target of envy, and I was often harshly criticized for even minor mistakes. Being new to corporate life, I struggled with understanding business etiquette and social norms, sweating through every new challenge. My colleagues would just scoff, offering no help. I felt completely isolated at work. Despite this, I worked tirelessly, volunteering for menial tasks and responding earnestly to unreasonable demands from superiors. Seeing documents I worked hard on being thrown into the trash with a smirk or finding my desk littered with trash, I often thought about quitting. It was disheartening to be judged through the lens of being the president's son despite all my efforts. What kept me going was my mother's presence. The mixed emotions she must have swallowed when she asked for me to be hired at my father's company must have been excruciating. For her sake, I had to meet the company's expectations. As I continued to work relentlessly, gradually people began to recognize my efforts. Slowly, I was accepted as a team member, and this began to reflect in my work results. It possibly provided a healthy stimulus for other employees as the company's sales started to rise. Year by year, as a result of my hard work, I was recognized and promoted. From this year, I became an executive director entrusted with important tasks. I have been involved in negotiations for the acquisition of Bradley Merchandising, a company that had been on a downward spiral for several years. Kev, you've made an incredible rise through the ranks. Never thought we'd have an executive director among our classmates. It's going to be awkward just casually inviting you out now. My unexpected identity caused a stir among the crowd. But Brad, still in disbelief, insisted, "Stop lying. I don't accept such a tall tale." Well, it seems your dad, the president, didn't share much about the company's situation with you. It's not surprising you didn't know, but my father was going to make me president. About that, I said, my expression serious, my father instructed me to overhaul the entire management of Bradley Merchandising, from the president down. That's impossible. Brad's face froze. But I didn't have enough evidence to make such a drastic decision. Then I heard about the reunion and remembered you were supposed to be the next president. I thought it wouldn't be too late to meet and talk here. I let out a breath, releasing the disappointment welling up inside. Brad, you haven't changed at all. Still belittling and blaming others, still full of baseless confidence. That doesn't mean you can fire me. Come on, help me out. We're classmates, right? His attitude had changed drastically from his earlier arrogance, now desperately pleading. But I wasn't going to soften my stance over something like this. I just made a logical decision as a business leader. Running a company isn't as easy as you think, I said firmly and grabbed Brad's shoulders, looking him in the eye. I've faced many injustices as the president's son, but I never gave up because this company was my only path. You had more advantages attending a good high school and graduating from college. It's time you put in real effort for once in your life. Tears held back, my voice shaking, I spoke to Brad, but he just stared back in silence, not uttering a word. A month after the reunion, I stood in front of the Bradley Merchandising building with my father. Today we'll officially proceed with the acquisition. I had confided in my father the day before, and after some reluctance, he agreed to my terms. We've been waiting for you, said the president of Bradley Merchandising, greeting us as he entered the meeting room, followed by his son Brad. Bradley spoke of his intentions to have Brad succeed him as president. Now about the acquisition. He prompted me to start the discussion, but Brad's behavior was appalling, far from what one would expect from a future president or even a professional. I raised my voice. Hey Brad, are you even listening? This is about the future of the company. Do you even realize the responsibilities of a president? I don't need to hear that from you, Brad retorted. Then he turned to his father, saying something outrageous. Dad, are you sure it's okay to trust our company to someone who just climbed up using his parents' influence? Brad's suggestion that he was more capable of making beneficial decisions for the company seemed almost delusional. My father, witnessing this, clearly showed a look of exasperation. Even the usually stern face of Bradley grew more severe. Fool, what do you know about our company? He said, his temples throbbing with anger. Brad could only stare back with an expression I had never seen before. Bradley continued, unabated by his anger. Mark's right. Your attitude today is beyond disrespectful. Running a company is not a game. If you're not serious, then leave. Brad's voice was pitifully weak in response to his father's overwhelming presence. The president then stood up, facing us with a serious expression. I apologize for this disgraceful display. I've been too indulgent with my son, expecting him to become more responsible in the workforce, but I was mistaken. I never imagined he would behave so foolishly, especially in such a setting. To you, the executive director of Johnson Merchandising, and you, Mark, I apologize for his many indiscretions. As a parent, I am truly sorry. My father then addressed Bradley. Your feelings are clear, Bradley. The once imposing figure of the food company's president seemed utterly diminished. Bradley, with a desperate look, continued. President Mark, we need your help to save Bradley Merchandising. We no longer have the strength to continue on our own. If we come under your company's wing, I will step down from all my management roles and leave. The same goes for the entire board. But please, keep our employees, our precious staff, without letting anyone go. With that, he bowed so deeply his forehead nearly touched the table. I looked at my father, who seemed deep in thought, his eyes closed. Dad, I murmured quietly. He nodded solemnly. Bradley, I began. Yes, I see how much you care about your company. Given that, let's give you another chance to turn things around. A chance. Brad and his father looked shocked. Yes, a chance. If you genuinely care about your employees, there's still something to be done. We'll support you as much as we can. If that fails, we have no choice but to take over completely. Mark, how can I ever thank you? Beside his tearful father, Brad looked completely drained, as if all the strength had left his body. I continued speaking, glancing between the two. I've always resented my father, I began, causing a look of shock in Brad. He neglected our family under the guise of work, forcing me to give up high school. I aimed to prove him wrong. But my mother, who suffered the most, forgave him. I still vividly remember my mother's resolute face when she chose to forgive. At first, I couldn't understand her, but now I get why she decided to forgive. She taught me the importance of it. Mark, I heard my father murmur softly. I am who I am today because my mother forgave my father. And recently, I finally felt like I can forgive him too. Bradley nodded in agreement, feeling as if pushed forward by an invisible force. I continued my thoughts. Everyone deserves a second chance. People become stronger by overcoming adversity, I said, turning to Brad, who was slouched back in his chair. Brad, it starts here. Isn't this your time to step up? But I don't know anything about running a company, Brad replied. I placed my hand on his shoulder. It's okay to start now. Work hard, and the results will follow. Mark. Brad looked at me, a faint smile on his face for the first time. After countless discussions, Bradley Merchandising agreed to a business partnership with Johnson Merchandising and began the path to recovery. Brad became the new president with his father as an advisor. Brad, shedding the pride of being the son of Bradley Merchandising, worked tirelessly to regain the trust of each business partner through humble visits. His transformation inspired the employees. Their mindset began to shift. The company, once complacent under the guise of a large corporation and marred by internal power struggles, saw its employees stand up to the challenge. Sales put more effort into their work, and the administration focused on creating a welcoming environment for business partners. Notably enhanced working conditions by revising inclusive welfare policies and eliminating exclusive systems, contributing to a significant turnaround for the formerly struggling Bradley Merchandising. Encouraged by the changes in everyone, including Brad, the company's sales gradually climbed like ascending stairs. This year, we were even able to provide bonuses to all employees, albeit modest ones. Similarly, our company's performance improved significantly, and we've now reached a point where we can sponsor various advertising campaigns. Mark, President, hurry up. Just a minute. Wait for me, I replied. The reunion became a catalyst for rekindling friendships with classmates. Initially wary of Brad, they were now impressed by his transformation, sharing jokes and laughter. Hey, can we drop the president title when we're off work? I replied with faint annoyance playfully. It's just a habit. Brad said, scratching his head in embarrassment, his demeanor endearingly sincere. Then at least call me by my old nickname when we're not working. I forgot what it was. You used to call me that all the time. Can't believe you remember that, Brad said, fighting exasperation. All right, how about this? From now on, every time you call me president, you owe me a drink. I thought to myself it was indeed a good idea. That's a good idea. Okay, Kev, that's a first, Brad said, stopping in his tracks and calling me by the nostalgic nickname. Thanks, Kev. Human nature tends to cling to negative emotions, and I've been no exception. I resented being looked down upon for being a high school dropout and felt bitter about my social standing. If I hadn't forgiven my father, I might not have reached out to Brad and others. Despite all the harassment from Brad, I couldn't give up on him, remembering my own struggles. People who overcome hardships can face any challenge ahead. If you strongly desire to start over, you can change. From that point, I plan to lead the company humbly, navigating the challenges of business with dedication alongside my valuable friends and colleagues. My beautiful childhood friends suddenly moved into my room. You might wonder why. My name is Elijah. I'm just an average single office worker, but right now, I'm doing my best raising a child. The 3-year-old girl is active and sometimes a handful. Every day, I'm flitting back and forth between work, daycare, and home. You might wonder why a single man like me is raising a child. There's a big reason for that. The 3-year-old I'm raising is my niece, Hannah. Her mother was my sister. However, my sister and her husband died in a traffic accident 6 months ago. My parents are elderly and often in and out of the hospital due to poor health. I thought of turning to my brother-in-law's family, but they weren't on good terms, so I couldn't rely on them. I felt bad putting Hannah into an institution, so I decided to raise her myself. Luckily, I have a decent income and a good amount of savings as a single man. On top of that, my workplace is flexible with hours, and my boss, who is also raising a child, fully supports me. I was told I could take time off if something happened, and even if I couldn't work for a while, I had enough money to live on. But raising a child is not so easy. Hannah, now 3, is starting to learn words and talk about various things. But because she's still developing her language skills, there are times when she can't express her feelings well, and I am not used to raising kids. I cut back my work hours and left Hannah at my parents' home or daycare during that time. But honestly, it was not sustainable. While Hannah is usually quiet at my parents' house or daycare, as soon as we get home, she starts creating chaos, shouting, "I want juice. I want to play." If I scold her while she's throwing a tantrum, it only makes things worse. In the beginning, I was determined to raise Hannah, but after taking her in for a few months, I'll be honest, I was feeling down. Every time Hannah cried, I felt like she was saying she'd be better off with her real family, and I was feeling pressured. Seeing me like this, my parents decided to help. They sent a housekeeper to help me out. They suggested I should take a little break. They probably felt bad for putting so much burden on me, considering they were in and out of the hospital. The house was a mess, and there were many times when I felt I needed a woman's touch. I was really grateful for my parents' thoughtfulness. So today, the housekeeper was supposed to come. She's from a home cleaning service. When I saw the housekeeper who arrived, I almost screamed. Sandra? Adam? We both nearly screamed in front of the entrance. Yes, the housekeeper who came today was my childhood friend. Her name is Sandra. She used to live in my neighborhood, an incredibly beautiful girl, my first love. Sandra was just so gorgeous in every way that many other boys also had her as their first love. She had clear skin, beautiful long black hair, a figure that developed too well, and a calm smile. There was no way not to fall for her, and indeed she was extremely popular. By the time we were in the later grades of elementary school, there were love letters in her locker every day, and there was a legendary story about her receiving countless gifts on her birthday. When we got to middle school, the number of boys she turned down was countless. And I, who had been good friends with her since elementary school and often walked to school with her, was quite resented. But our relationship as good friends didn't last forever. Around middle school, she started being followed by a bad guy. Her parents decided they couldn't solve the problem and moved away with Sandra when she graduated from middle school. We kept in touch for a while, but eventually we drifted apart. And that leads us to now. I'm surprised. I thought the name sounded familiar, but I didn't expect it to be you, Sandra said. Adam, no. I didn't expect you to be the one coming either, I replied. Apparently, Sandra had received my information from the company, but now I'm not living at my parents' house, and this place is not near my childhood home. Moreover, Sandra knew that I was pretty good at housework and used to help around the house, so she didn't think I'd need a housekeeping service. But once she saw the state of my house, Sandra shrugged her shoulders. What happened here? The truth is my sister passed away in a car accident, and I've taken in my niece. Sandra used to come over to my house a lot when we were in elementary school, so she knew my sister and offered me condolences. So sorry for your loss. Hearing those words makes me a bit sentimental. I was trying to raise her well, though I know I can't replace my sister, but I've got my hands full taking care of her, and as you can see. Don't be so hard on yourself. This is your first time raising a kid. If you have time to feel down, spend it with your niece. After saying this, Sandra started to get busy. She opened the windows to let in fresh air, quickly put the laundry I'd taken off into the washing machine, and started tackling the pile of dishes. She was like a wizard. When I picked up Hannah from daycare and came back home, the house was unrecognizably clean, which even surprised Hannah. Our house is so shiny. Sandra's work should be finished by the evening. I figured she would have left while I was at daycare picking up Hannah. I felt I should have thanked her for her amazing work, and just as I thought that. Oh, welcome back. From the kitchen, Sandra poked her head out. She was wearing an apron and her appearance was that of a typical wife. Wait, Sandra, weren't you done for the day? Yeah, I was, but I just couldn't leave it like this. Oh, here's your key. I had left my key with Sandra and asked her to leave it in my mailbox when she was finished. I didn't want to keep Sandra until the time I picked up Hannah, but it seems like she stayed anyway after notifying her company that she'd be going straight home. Nice to meet you, Hannah. I'm sorry to bother you at home. My name is Sandra. You must be surprised, right? Sandra squatted down to say hello to Hannah, but Hannah, perhaps a bit shy, clung tightly to my leg. Seeing this, Sandra smiled and said, "It's a bit intimidating, isn't it?" And then looked at me. Come on, wash your hands and gargle. I made dinner, so let's fill your tummy first. But aren't you off work? Yeah, I'm done, but I just wanted to help out personally. I hope you don't mind. Sandra looked up at me, her head cocked to one side, and honestly, I couldn't resist her charm. In fact, I was quite pleased. I had joked about wanting to try Sandra's cooking before I left to pick up Hannah, and it seems she had heard me. Of course I can cook too, but there are times when you just want to eat someone else's homemade food, so I decided to let myself enjoy Sandra's hospitality today. Hannah was initially nervous, but the moment she tasted Sandra's hamburger, she said, "Delicious." Better than yours, uncle, and was wolfing it down in no time at all. She warmed up to Sandra. It's a hard pill to swallow, but Sandra's burger is 10 times better than mine. I wonder how she manages to make such a juicy and fluffy hamburger. She even shaped the burger into a bear to make it appealing to children. Seeing Hannah's delighted face, even though I felt a bit frustrated, it must have shown on my face. Since you, Adam, have been taking care of Hannah, I was able to focus on the cooking. That's why it's only natural that my cooking is better than yours, she said. At that moment, I felt my heart, which had always been half-hearted about childcare, suddenly lighten. It's always like this. Sandra knows just the right words to say when you need them. When I lost a fight in elementary school and was feeling down, Sandra would comfort me, saying, "Is it really amazing to win a fight? I don't think so. You're just fine as you are, Adam." And when it looked like I wouldn't get into the college I wanted, she gently pushed me forward, saying, "It's not the end of the world if you don't get into that school. You could have other opportunities at other schools, and if you stress too much, you might fail to seize even those you could have." Thanks to her, the pressure eased, and I was able to successfully pass the exam. But Sandra moved away, and I haven't been able to return the favor. I was thinking about this while I was putting Hannah to bed. I'm a grown man, and I really wanted to do something to repay her, but I've spent a long time apart from Sandra, and honestly, I didn't know what she would want. So I asked Sandra, "Hey Sandra, I want to thank you for everything you did today. Is there anything you want?" When I suddenly said that, Sandra looked surprised with wide eyes. "What's with you all of a sudden?" "No, it's not sudden. I've been helped by you since the old days, Sandra. I just want to return the favor." "That's a bit too much." Sandra tried to laugh it off, but seeing my serious gaze, she coughed a little in embarrassment. "Well, if you insist, there is something I want." "Really? What is it?" "I can't promise anything, but I'll try to get it for you." "Well, a spare key to your place." "What?" Sandra looked straight into my eyes without making a joke. "Well, without me around, Adam, I think you'll mess up the room in no time. Also, I'm worried about Hannah. Girls grow up so fast. Even you sometimes make comments that lack delicacy, so I want to stick around for a while." Saying that, Sandra extended her hand. "Are you sure about this?" "Absolutely. It will be convenient for me, and I'll be happy to have access to your house." Sandra gifted me with a warm smile, so I handed her the spare key. Since then, my life has changed dramatically. In the beginning, Sandra would come over in between her housekeeping service jobs, but that was just at first. Lately, she started staying over at my place, claiming that it's too much trouble to go home. Living under the same roof with the woman I once adored is a wonderful thing, but the reality is, with a 3-year-old girl in the house, there's no time to dwell in such moods. Thanks to Sandra taking over the housework, I can spend time with Hannah. Hannah returns home having learned a lot at her daycare. If I take my eye off her for even a moment, I'd surely be left behind her growth. So I was happy that I could properly look after Hannah, and Hannah too has seen changes. She must have associated Sandra with her mom. Hannah started to become more dependent on Sandra, and she stopped throwing tantrums. Even if Sandra isn't her mother, the presence of a woman who is there to protect her must have comforted Hannah. Before we knew it, neither Hannah nor I could imagine a life without Sandra. We started going out together, playing together, just like any normal family. It was about time to be a real man. I started thinking about marrying Sandra and wishing that we could stay together forever. But what about Sandra? Well, she's done so much for us. I wanted to believe she feels the same way, but this is not something I can rush into. With that thought, I hesitated. Can anyone blame me? I didn't want to ruin this relationship. But all things have an end, and that day came suddenly. Actually, I was married before. It was when Hannah was asleep, and we were enjoying a quiet drink. Perhaps led by the alcohol, Sandra dropped this bombshell out of the blue. What? I was so surprised that I involuntarily screamed out loud. I hurriedly clamped my mouth shut and looked at the bedroom. But Hannah hadn't woken up. Feeling relieved about that, I listened to the rest of Sandra's story. I thought, this guy seems nice. I can marry him. But it turned out he was a huge narcissist. He only kept me around because I was pretty, and he demanded I make an effort to stay beautiful. Can you believe that? Sandra was unusually venting as she said so. Despite her beauty, Sandra was always sought after for her looks. Whenever Sandra did anything even slightly unruly, they all left her. It's so much easier with you, Adam. You don't complain if I don't drink cute cocktails or comment on the design of my pajamas. That's just because your taste is so troubling I've given up commenting on it. What did you say? While exclaiming, Sandra puckered her lips and guzzled her beer in a robust manner. She always drinks like this, but today she was even faster and more masculine. By the way, the pajamas she's wearing today have a rather unique design, featuring a character depicted as a teacup with arms and legs sitting on heels. I wondered why Sandra chose it, but Hannah found it very good. I didn't understand it, and I'm not one to comment on Sandra's clothes. But if a woman differed from their ideal, some men would point it out or even enforce their ideals. That must be quite stifling. So, thank you, Adam. For always accepting me. I should have married you. I wonder why I never let you go. With that, Sandra slumped over the table. I thought it was her way of hiding her embarrassment, but I was wrong. Sandra had fallen asleep right then and there. Sheesh, you've had too much to drink tonight. I carried Sandra to bed. In her own way, Sandra must have struggled. All that struggle just spilled out a little. It's just because of the alcohol. This isn't Sandra's true feelings. Besides, she just mentioned she's been divorced. She's probably trying to tell me she's not thinking about getting married again. But if she does want to get married, she'd want it to be with me. I just don't know anymore. I seriously pondered what Sandra had said, but I still couldn't find the answer. So the following evening, without a nightcap, I asked Sandra. I figured I had to ask, Sandra, do you want to marry me? Caught off guard by my question, Sandra's gaze wandered a little. She stammered out, I'm sorry. I said something weird yesterday, didn't I? I get it. You have Hannah, and you're not thinking about marriage, right? We've been friends since we were kids, so we couldn't possibly see each other that way. And yet, I said something like that yesterday. Wait a minute. I want to marry you, Sandra. I grabbed Sandra's arm as she panicked, staring at her intently. Then Sandra looked at me with wide eyes. Marry me? You do. That's why I'm having this conversation. Geez, you always understand others so well. But when it comes to yourself, you're so slow. Really? No way. Sandra hugged me, careful not to wake up Hannah with her excitement. I was surprised but stroked her head. Sandra cared about me too, but she held herself back, seeing me struggle with raising Hannah, figuring I didn't need more on my plate. In other words, the two of us together couldn't take that important step. It's pathetic for adults like us, but maybe this is the result of being too considerate because we care about each other so much. But Sandra, are you really ready to get married? Usually, people are more careful about this kind of thing. I'm ready in my heart. Saying this with a smile, Sandra stepped back from me. She then took something out of her bag and held it out in front of me. When she unfolded it, it was a marriage certificate. When did you get this? You remember how I told you yesterday that I was divorced? That made me want to show my commitment, so I picked this up today. Sandra said this with a shy smile. Despite all the talk, I was determined to properly convey my feelings to Sandra, who had prepared so well. I love you, Sandra. I love you too, Adam. With that, we both broke into laughter. Not long after, Sandra and I got married. It's what you'd call a zero-dating courtship marriage. We were practically dating, but had never been on an official date or anything like that. Since we had married in that state, we were very conscious of each other's situation and very nervous about each other. Well, we were happy to be in that mix of beginning a relationship and a honeymoon period. You get what I mean, right? Despite all this, we didn't have a wedding ceremony. There's Hannah to think about after all. Besides, we thought our apartment was too small, so we bought a house, which meant we couldn't afford a wedding. Once we got the house and bought a car, Hannah, before we knew it, was 6 years old and had grown into a grade schooler. With our marriage, we officially adopted Hannah, and we became a legal family. Now, hearing her call us Dad and Mom brings us so much joy. And our family isn't just Hannah. There's a new addition on the way in Sandra's belly, our child who will be Hannah's little brother or sister. Even though Sandra's not showing much yet, Hannah has already started helping out around the house, perhaps in the spirit of being a big sister. Sandra always said that girls grow up fast, and she wasn't kidding. But there's always laughter around us. We're happier now than I could have ever imagined when it was just Hannah and me. And I am fiercely determined to protect this life at all costs. For Hannah, for Sandra, for the child who's on the way, I've resolved to do my very best. How did you find it? Your subscription to the channel motivates us to create more content. Let's meet again in the next video. Another project already. I haven't even finished this one yet, I muttered. Be grateful you have work. Multitasking is what professionals do, the section chief said, walking away from my desk. My name is Ryan, and I'm a software engineer in my 3rd year with the company. This job rarely lets me leave at a regular time. No matter how quickly I finish tasks, new ones keep coming in. The main issue is our manager. He agrees to take on everything, which is a problem. He doesn't track our schedules or progress, so the workload is insane. The only time I remember leaving on time was a couple of years ago. The manager was away on a business trip, and I decided to hang out with some coworkers. We went to a bowling alley, where we met some ladies playing in the next lane. We hit it off and decided to go to a bar together. That's where I met my future wife, Ava. Ava and I got married about a year after we met. My job was as hectic as ever, and I was constantly working overtime. But on weekends, Ava and I would go out for movies, dinner, and shopping at the mall. Lately, Ava had been experiencing a lot of lower back and abdominal pain. She tried massages, chiropractic treatments, and osteopathic care, but nothing seemed to work. One night, she had not just her usual back pain, but also severe abdominal pain. I found her condition alarming and called an ambulance. We ended up in the ER in the middle of the night. I thought it might be appendicitis, but I was way off the mark. The ER doctor, an internal medicine specialist, looked quite concerned and said, "Ava, you should see a gynecologist immediately." A gynecological issue? She's been wanting kids. Is she going to be okay? Worries flooded my mind. All I wished for was Ava to recover. The next day, I took a day off and accompanied her to a renowned hospital's gynecology department. It turned out Ava had uterine cancer. It had advanced and even spread to her colon. I blamed myself. She started showing symptoms of back pain about 6 months ago. Why didn't I take her to the hospital sooner? If it had been detected earlier, she might have had a chance with surgery. She was given just 3 months to live. I immediately discussed this with my supervisor and department head. All I wanted was to leave work on time as much as possible. I even went to my team and asked for their understanding and cooperation. My colleagues were very supportive. The following 3 months until Ava's departure went by in a flash. Honestly, I felt numb, like it wasn't real. I couldn't even look back at her past. After her funeral, I didn't feel like doing anything or even going outside. I didn't want to go back to work, but considering my colleagues who supported me, I felt obligated to return. So, I resumed work after 2 weeks. After lunch, I was called into the conference room. Both the department head and manager were there, looking grim. "Ryan, we understand you had a tough time at home. But look, our work situation is also very challenging. Leaving on time for 3 months and then taking 2 weeks off, that's not acceptable," the section chief said with a tone dripping in sarcasm. "Yes, I apologize to everyone in the department for any inconvenience," I said, although deep down, I thought I hadn't really inconvenienced the director, who wasn't involved with the computer program at all. Next, the manager chimed in. "You don't want to be in a busy department, do you? We happen to have an opening in our office out in Iowa. You'll start there next week." I remembered hearing from a colleague, probably Mike, that if you took consecutive days off or refused overtime several times, you could be sent to a less desirable position. With Ava gone and a void in my heart, I didn't care where I worked anymore. Working had become so insignificant that I simply didn't care about it anymore. Feeling utterly disheartened and lacking any motivation, I just sat there, nodded, and returned to my seat. Sometime later, I moved. My new location was a quiet rural town. Demoted at such a young age. Huh. I mumbled to myself, looking at the vast landscape. Before I knew it, a week had passed since my transfer. The new company, for better or worse, was a place where I had a lot of free time. Hardly any need for overtime. I could work at my own pace. One day, I was coding a simple program at a coffee shop for a change of pace. After a while, droplets began to fall on the table I was using. It was raining outside. For a second, I thought the roof was leaking. Looking up, I saw a soaked girl with brown hair and streaks of red and blue, kind of looking like a rebel, staring intently at my laptop. Worried about the water damaging my laptop, I began to shut it down. But the girl quickly said, "Wait. Hey, mister, you work with computers, right? Can I see? I'm kind of interested." "Well, yeah, but you should dry off first. Don't want you catching a cold," I replied and called the staff. "Excuse me, can we get a towel for this young lady here?" As she dried herself off with the towel brought over by the staff, she thanked me. "Thank you, sir, for the towel." She might have looked like a handful, but she had manners. I was pleasantly surprised. We continued chatting over warm coffee. The girl, named Catherine, was a senior at a nearby public high school. She had just started her senior year and was unsure about her future. "I'm not really academic, so college isn't in the cards. But I want to pick the right job," Catherine shared. She had tried various part-time jobs like working in a factory, being a cashier at a grocery store, and even fast food, but nothing felt right. Then I thought, everything's about computers nowadays. She didn't own a computer, but got interested after some lessons at school. If she wanted more options for jobs, knowing computers would be essential. I told Catherine, "I'll be working at the coffee shop for the rest of the week, so if you need anything, feel free to drop by." The next day, and the day after that, she came to the coffee shop. When she asked my name and I told her, she began calling me Mr. Smith. "What's all that stuff you're always doing on your computer, Mr. Smith? All those letters and stuff. It looks like some kind of spell." "Oh, this? It's called programming. It's used to make websites and blogs." After explaining how websites are made by combining various characters and symbols, she became very interested. "Do you have a computer at home?" I asked, to which she replied she didn't. Eager to learn, Catherine began to copy the contents of my screen onto her notebook diligently, day after day. After about a month of this, I made a proposal. "You'll learn faster if you actually use a computer rather than just copying things down. We've got an old laptop at the office we were going to toss out. Want to use it for studying?" Her eyes lighting up, Catherine exclaimed, "Really, Mr. Smith? I can have it." "Yeah, it's old and not the best, but better than nothing," I explained. "That's fine, just having one is great." A few days later, when I gave Catherine the computer, She jumped up and down and said, "Yay." From the next day, she came armed with a barrage of questions. She was diligent, buying books to study from and bringing a notebook filled with questions to go through. Thanks to that, she was able to launch a small website just 6 months later. "Hey, I can use this as a reference for job hunting," she said with a gleaming smile, obviously delighted. With job interviews just days away, Catherine dyed her hair jet black. "Catherine, you look so professional." "Just for now. Once I secure a job, I'll go back to being stylish," she said with a bashful smile, slightly pouting. "Good luck with your interviews." "Thanks," Catherine replied, flashing a peace sign with a big grin. 2 weeks later, while I was at our usual coffee shop, Catherine burst in excitedly. Ryan, guess what? I got a job offer." She reported the news with a radiant smile as if a flower had blossomed on her face. I replied, "That's great. Congratulations." To my surprise, Catherine started crying, still wearing that big smile. "Ryan, thank you. Getting into my first choice company is all thanks to you. I really appreciate it." Seeing her like this made me happy. To me, Catherine always seemed a bit quirky, but I found her irresistibly charming. Ever since Ava left, there had been a gaping hole in my life, but Catherine slowly started filling it. Soon, I realized I spent more time helping Catherine study than dwelling on memories of Ava. "No, Catherine, I'm the one who should be thanking you. Do you want to go out for dinner next Sunday to celebrate?" She cheerfully replied, "Sounds great." And just like that, it was April. "Good morning," a person from HR greeted everyone as the morning meeting began. "Today we'll introduce the new employees who will join us this year. All right, all of you, please come forward." The personnel at the back were beckoned to step up in front. What? Upon seeing the 3 new recruits, I almost dropped the documents I was holding. Among the new hires, there were 2 men and 1 woman. The sole female employee was Catherine. As Catherine caught my gaze, she discreetly flashed a peace sign with her right hand. Indeed, Catherine had joined the ed department I was a part of. "Good morning. You surprised me. I thought you'd start at the company where you got your job offer. I was planning to ask you how you were doing once you settled in. I was worried," I told her. She giggled. "Haha, be prepared to work hard. Okay. Please go easy on me." Catherine stuck her tongue out playfully and smiled. Every time I saw that smile, it warmed my heart. Asked if I had romantic feelings for Catherine, who was 7 years younger, I'd honestly be unsure. But one thing's certain, she's a special presence in my life. On the morning of the new fiscal year, seeing Catherine's face was a surprise, but it gave me a new goal: to nurture this adorable girl into a full-fledged programmer. I felt that my life, which had been just a daily routine of doing the work in front of me, was now filled with a sense of purpose. When I got home that night, I looked at a picture of my wife and talked to her. "Ever since you left, I've been like an empty shell. You must have been worried about me, but after coming to this countryside town and meeting Catherine, teaching her about computers almost daily, I've been distracted from my sorrow. I wonder if you're jealous watching over me and Catherine. I'll do my best to be a reliable senior, so please watch over me. I will walk firmly forward so that you can rest assured." With that, I silently made a promise to Ava in the photograph. Ava seemed to smile gently at me as if saying, "That's right, I'm cheering for you." That's the feeling I got.